Juice from cashew fruit is the one ingredient in feni, a rare liquor made only in this part of the world. This family is one of the few still using techniques that date back to the 1500s. While some brands are pushing to bring feni to the mainstream, these farmers found a way to stay in business by hand-making small batches and selling locally. We visited Goa, India, to see how this centuries-old tradition is still standing. The Gaunkar family searches their land for fallen fruits every morning. The fruits fall when they're ripe. They use a wooden stick with a needle at the end to pick up each cashew fruit. Drupadi Gaunkar is the matriarch of the 100-year-old family operation. She's been making feni for 60 years and took over the business after her husband passed away.
आता माझ्या सऱ्या वयता शेसे लोक कोणाला बरं केलो सर बरं ते अजून बरं करता सर असे म्हणता आणि लोक खबर राहिलेले आता बाबा.
During feni season, from March to April, her children and grandchildren help out. After filling around 8 buckets in an hour, they take out the seeds. One by one, the family separates the cashew fruit from the cashew nut. They sell the raw cashews to factories that roast and package them. Then it's time to juice. Santosh Gaunkar puts on mining boots. The hard soles get more juice out of the fruits. He grew up helping his mother on the farm and has been doing this full-time for 25 years.
मेरे अंदाज से वो पूरा पहले से ही स्टार्ट हुआ लगता है मेरे को.
Little by little, he stomps away. The family used to use a big wooden stick for this step, but they eventually found that stomping with their feet was more effective. It can get slippery, so Santosh holds on tight for balance. Juicing a full vat of cashew apples takes about an hour. And in the 100-degree heat, it can be exhausting.
मेहनत का काम है लेकिन आदमी मेहनत किया ना और थोड़ा फ्रेश रहता है बाद में और थोड़ा नींद भी अच्छा आता है रात शाम को.
During breaks, they get fresh cashew fruit juice that you can't find in stores. It has a shelf life of just 1 day. Then, Santosh piles the last bits of fruit into a mound. He wraps it with a rope and drags a few rocks on top to squeeze out every last drop of juice. They leave the fruits like this overnight. Machines would speed up this process, but it's not an option for this family.
लोग मशीन नहीं ला सकते हैं ना और हम लोग को गरीब का ऐसा हम लोग को ऐसा पाँव से ही करता है.
Plus, Santosh says handmade feni tastes better.
इसमें मशीन में डालने के टाइम वो क्या उसमें पतरे का है लगता है जंग लगता है. वो जंग लगे ना उसका ये स्माइल पतरे का उसमें दारू में इसमें रस में मिलता है और इसमें हम लोग पाँव में क्या आता है उसको फ्रेश आता है.
They throw away the fruit waste or give it to farmers to use as cattle feed. Bucket by bucket, they filter out any pulp fibers through a cloth. Then the juice sits to ferment for 2 or 3 days. They transfer it into a copper drum. Meanwhile, Drupadi prepares to seal the drum by dousing a piece of cloth in mud. The mud comes from nearby ant hills. The ants and snakes that live in these mounds refine the soil, which makes it better for sealing the tanks.
तो इसमें पत्थर ज़्यादा यूज़ नहीं होता है, ज़्यादा होता नहीं, तो लेता नहीं, खाली मट्टी रहता है.
Drupadi wraps the clay-covered cloth around the openings to ensure no air escapes. She lights a fire to heat the juice, using wood harvested from their land. It burns for around 8 hours. Steam passes through the pipe and into a tank filled with water. It cools down the vapor, and a slow stream of arak comes out the other end. Arak is a less alcoholic beverage that the family sells when there's demand. Otherwise, they put it back into the copper pot and distill it for another 7 to 8 hours. Once it reaches the right temperature, it's feni, with 40 to 45% alcohol. They also test it by looking at the bubbles, which should be big and spread apart slowly. The family learned this through decades of experience and close observation.
ये फेनी का मतलब क्या है, उसमें प्रोसेस है कि प्योर रहता है। वो दूसरा क्या दारू निकाल दो, उसमें कुछ केमिकल ये सब मिक्स करता है।
They make 175 liters of feni every season and usually sell all of it to local buyers. But business today looks a little different than it used to. People in nearby villages have moved to bigger cities for work, so fewer people come by to drink feni.
येताले म्हणजे दिसा कितें तुगेले 200-300 रुपयाचो पूण कितें येपेत जातालो आतां ते मेले बावडे सगळे.
The family brings in around 50,000 Indian rupees, or nearly $700 in a season. And their operation probably won't be getting any bigger, since buying more land can be expensive. The government auctions off trees to the highest bidder.
पहले क्या गरीब लोग के पास अब पैसा नहीं रहता ना उसको बोनी लगाने के लिए, जो पैसा रहेगा उसको बोनी मिलेगा वही उन लोग को मिलता है, इसलिए वो लोग ज़्यादा लोग कम हो गया.
Meanwhile, other feni makers in Goa are looking to expand the market and popularize the drink. A brand called Cashew draws in locals and tourists with a tasting room and distillery tours.
Basically, when you step out from here, you are baptized into a new feni drinker.
One of the tour's big attractions is the underwater aging technique. Workers have to dive in the water to pull out aged bottles of feni.
We have feni that has been resting for more than 2 years so that the flavors mellow down but under controlled temperature. It was an old technique used by the Georgians for wines.
Cashew gets its feni from local farmers who hand make it in the traditional way, just like the Gaunkar family. Some of these methods date back to at least the 1500s, when farmers in this region used to make liquor from coconut palm sap, called toddy.
Our ancestors had this thought where they said, you know what, let's innovate. Let's take an extra step ahead. You know, if we can do a distilled toddy, which has sugar, let's try distilling fruits.
After the Portuguese brought cashew trees from Brazil to Goa, at some point during the 16th century, distilling cashew feni became more common since it was easier to produce. It's been popular throughout Goa ever since, but it hasn't been able to break out beyond state lines.
Feni comes under the country liquor category. That very notion puts you in a place saying that, you know what, it's an inferior spirit. The world outside Goa is so difficult to enter in terms of spirit. It is a great spirit with a great story and a great culture, but we've not been able to put it out.
So we use chili and salt.
We've been in a bubble for more than 200 years where feni has existed but never spoken about, and now it's time that we come out of a bubble.
For the Gaunkar family, they're not sure how much longer their business will sustain them.
इधर यही काम करके हम लोग का नहीं मिलेगा, कल बाद में वो झाड़ मर गया तो बाद में हम लोग को झाड़ कैसा, क्यों हम लोग को वही पेट भरने का काम है ना, इसलिए हम लोग को क्या है वही उसका एग्रीकल्चर करके उसका बढ़ाने का, उसका झाड़ लगाने का, वही प्रोसेस चालू करने का हम लोग का, वही इसमें हम लोग का जाता है लाइफ.